this morning. I can't wait to steal it and make it better. I just can't. I can't wait to. So I'm going to take a look at two different Jesus stories, and you're going to make it real. We're going to experience the power of the other, because it's my belief that no one journeys alone, no one heals alone, and no one celebrates alone. So if you're a Lone Ranger Christian, you are not. You're only in the shallow end of the pool. It's time to wade into the deep end. So we're again at the table. Whatever shared there stays there, unless someone wants to make it much more public. So the first part's going to be a little lighter. The middle part's going to be really heavy. I got to tell you, the middle part is going to be heavy. That's the part that no one heals alone. So maybe you're here and you're just burdened with something. Maybe tonight is healing. I've been praying for this for a couple of weeks, and I don't fast. I don't like fast, but I did give up Brussels sprouts for you guys for 3 weeks because that's how important this is. I want you to know that if tonight is a night you're burdened, no one heals alone, and your brothers are here. So if you're here and in a good place with God, and you're really in a healthy place, you might just be here to hear the story of someone who needs help healing. So that'll be the second part. The third part will be no one celebrates alone, and we're going to end in a really positive note. So Matthew chapter 5, Mark chapter 5 is what I was supposed to do at the Bible at Brew, and I know Carrie's doing that this Thursday, so I'm just going to go ahead and steal some of that right now. I was going to get my way no matter what.
I was going to say,
So chapter 4 of Mark ends this way. Jesus' ministry is booming. I mean, it's going to the right and up. And the apostles, they're just excited. They're seeing people come, and everywhere Jesus goes, they're followed. And then Jesus says this. At the end of chapter 4, he said, let's go to the other side. Now, that might not mean anything to you or me, but on the other side, it was completely pagan. Decapolis, the 10 cities of all the ites that were driven out, they all conglomerated in one place, and it was evil, and it was children worship, and children's sexual deviation, and temple prostitutes, and everything that was totally against anything that Israel stood for. And Jesus said, let's go to the other side. Now I'm thinking the disciples are thinking, the other side? What? Jesus, things are like booming here. Why would we do this? Jesus says, come on. Chapter 4 ends with they get on a boat, and the big storm comes, and they're like, Jesus has crashed in the front. He just had 2 gigantic pieces of that pork, and he was full. And he had to snooze. And the disciples they're all nervous, so they said, Jesus, wake up, aren't you scared? And aren't you worried? And he said, nope. And then he stands up, and then he tells the winds and the waves to stop. And then the disciples say this. They said, they were terrified, and they asked, who is this that even the wind and the waves obey him? But wait a minute, they have been traveling with him this whole time. And hold on to that question, because we're going to answer that in a really funny way by a really ridiculous person. They pull up on the Decapolis in a very dark area. It was really was a cemetery. Now, if you know anything about Jewish religion, then a rabbi was to stay clean. They were to avoid dead things, or not. They could be ceremonially unclean. And he ends right there. He gets out of the boat, and the first person they see is this crazy, wild, chain-breaking, tomb-dwelling demoniac. Jesus walks up to him. Now remember, the disciples just said, who is this that calms the winds? And the demoniac says, they swear to God that you are from the Most High. It's interesting that the demon knew who Jesus was, and the disciples, who give us hope, by the way, these should give you hope. These were the people Jesus chose to be with him. And then, if you remember the story, Jesus heals the demoniac. And it says 2 verses later, he's in his right mind. Now, he cast out the demons. If you remember, they went into the pig, or pork loins. That's where the demons went. They went into the pigs, and the pigs ran off and committed mass suicide. And the people from the town come out, and they're really upset. They're ticked, and they tell Jesus, "Get out of here." This is a weird part of Scripture that you didn't see to this point. So Jesus gets in the boat. The demoniac says, please let me go with you. I'll do whatever you want. I'll go wherever you tell me. And Jesus looks at him and says, no, I'm not going. Up until this point, everyone Jesus came into contact with, he would say, follow me. And they would follow him. But here he says, nope, it's going to be a different journey for the demoniac. And imagine what he had to do. Because then chapter 4 ends with this. He says, but just so the man went his way and began to tell everyone what Jesus had done for him. That's a tough verse. Because he was a demoniac. He lived out in the cemetery and he was so strong, chains couldn't hold him. He's crazy out of his mind. He scared half the people. And now, Jesus uses him for this new journey. Imagine how tough that was. Can you imagine the demoniac, the crazy, chain-breaking, tomb-dwelling demoniac. He's walking into the town and he sees a group of people. They see him and he sees them. And he walks up and he kind of shuffles his feet. Hey, how you doing? Hey, first of all, sorry I ate your cat. You know, and then they didn't know what to do. Then he says, hey, remember that time I came up behind you and I went like, brah! That's not cool. And I won't apologize. Now let me tell you about Jesus. And his journey starts in a very bizarre way. You know what the cool thing about everybody here? Your journeys are different and we're like-minded in so many things. I want you to take a few minutes to turn around and talk to your group about your journey. Like maybe how you got saved, the strangeness of your Jesus encounter. Take about 5 or 10 minutes. I'll turn some music on. That'll mean stop and look back here. We'll look at number 2. Turn into the table and experience the power of others right now. What he failed to tell me is that the girlfriend who he went with, who was a believer, told her that and he admitted that his salvation was insincere at first. But when she accepted Jesus, she was going to break up with him, so he immediately found grace. And whatever. So it probably wasn't real at that point, but your journeys are different, and it's interesting to hear each other's journey. Let me tell you the craziness of my life right now based with people's journey. So after 17 years I was a pastor, 16 and a half years a pastor at the same church, and I was paroled, and they let me free, and I spend a lot of time doing counseling. So I'm counseling people who are believers, and I'm really shocked at the bondage the Church of Christ is in. It's really, really sad. Galatians 5, Paul said this, it's for freedom that Jesus set us free. Now, I don't know if that hits you weird. That sounds kind of redundant. Well, why else would he set you free except for freedom? But if you dig into the construction of the passage, really the implication is, yes, when you were saved, eternal life happened immediately at that time. And then the salvation becomes progressive. So you were set free from darkness and entered into light. That happened at your journey. But the construction of the passage is that maybe you were set free, but somewhere down the road, 10, 15, 20 years later, there is a chance you'll end up being not free again. So he says, stand firm, therefore, don't let yourself be burdened by a yoke of slavery. The idea is, I was once free. The journey you explained was when you were set free. But the implication is there might be times in your Christian life where you're still in bondage and you're not free. See, the one consistent of not much freedom or a lack of freedom is that you're not free, and it's for freedom that he set you free. So, in this story, this is the heavy part. Some people's freedom is their past, and maybe you shared that in your journey. Maybe, you know, if anybody's went through 33 or men's journey, you heard about your father wounds, your mother wounds, all of that. All these things put your journey in motion, and then you were set free. But you find yourself here too. Maybe I'm here tonight to tell a couple people freedom is right here. Freedom is here tonight. Would that be exciting? I think it would be. So this story is one of my favorites. You remember John 11, where Jesus is walking around, and then he gets the news that, hey, Lazarus, your friend, is dead. He's dying and he's dead. He takes his time, he moseys into the city, his sister comes out, and Jesus, if you'd only been here, he would have died. And Jesus said, where have you laid him? As if he didn't know. She took him to the place where he laid him. And in John 11 he says this. Jesus saw her weeping. And then, the shortest verse in the Bible, it's pushed every Awana kid over the, when you need one go-to memorized verse, Jesus wept. But think how cool that is. He knew what he was going to do 2 verses from then. That he loves us even in the hardest time of our life. In the bondage of our life, in the unfreedom of our life, in the pain of our life. He wept. How cool is that? You're here tonight because no one heals alone, and maybe someone just needs you to sit by. Maybe, you know what they need? They don't need you to tell them what they did wrong. They don't need you to tell them what day your church has CR so they can work on the thing they need to work on. They just need you to go sit next to them and maybe even cry with them. To say that's how important you are. That's because no one heals alone. So then, as you read this, I've read this chapter. Probably preached it, I don't know how many times. And even as you read it new, God always opens things up. So I want to take 5 quick observations. If you're here tonight and you're not free, and every one of us along the continuum of our salvation have pockets where we're just not free. But tonight, maybe you're not going to heal alone. So Jesus looked at the tomb and he says, move the rock. And then he says, Lazarus, come out. And his sister runs up and says, no, Jesus, no, please, no. He's been in there for 4 days. It's the only time I like to quote the King James because it's a cool word, because it says, he stinketh. That's what a protective sister. Even in this moment, she's trying to protect him. It's interesting too that they say 4 days, because in that era, they were told that there was a possibility that a person's spirit could float around the dead body for 3 days. So if they were dead on the 4th day, they would bury him. So I think it was important that they mentioned this was 4 days, so no one could come back and say, well, he really wasn't dead. 4 days. Yeah. He's dead. He stinketh. And then he comes out, and he says he walks out, and then Jesus says, take off his clothes and let him go. Therefore many who saw this followed Jesus. So here's some observations you might find, and that you're going to share with your table. Because this is the hard part. I got to share where I'm in bondage. I have to share where I'm not free, and then I don't have to do this alone. So as you read this, I come up with a couple of observations, and number one is like the biggest, no kidding, duh, that nothing in your bondage is impossible. I know it feels impossible, and I know, here's what happens. You sit here at camp, and you're like, gosh, the Holy Spirit's pointing something right now. And then you talk yourself out of it. You get in the car, and you head down the hill, and as Peter said out there, I love the ugly one. The ugly one takes, and he starts to whisper in your head. You're like, you know what? It's not real. I've done this before. I've been to church before. I've been to camps before. I've heard this passage before. I've committed my life to Jesus before. I've went forward before. I've done a CR before. I've dealt with this before. Can't do it. It's impossible. I'm just here to tell a couple people today that it's possible. She said, Jesus, if you would have come, if I'd have known this before, or if you could have taken him before he would live, and some of you, that's your rationale of your bondage. I wish I'd have known this before I got married. I wish I would have known this before I started my porn problem. I wish I would have known this before. And you know what? It's never too late, because it's not impossible. Whatever day Jesus wanders into your life, it's the exact right day. It's the right time. So it says, nothing is impossible. The second one is this. The stench of your bondage, the stench of your decay is not offensive to Jesus. It's just not. Unfortunately, it's been offensive to your friends, or your family, maybe even your church. They can't stand the smell of what keeps you in bondage. They create a class for you in the back on a Thursday. A bunch of people at the same time bondages, get to compare bondages. But the truth is, your offense, your bondage, that thing that keeps you from being free, it just, that odor, that decay, it doesn't offend Jesus. He'll always stand right down south of your smell, and he's ready to deal with it. Don't listen to the liar tonight who says it's just not true. In fact, here's how you heal not alone. Here's how you go through healing. Because when you tell your story and your table is not shocked, maybe they have the same bondage. You'll find that you have brothers here who aren't offended by that either. The smell and of the decay of your lack of freedom is not offensive to Jesus. Then the third one is, freedom comes out of the voice of God through Christ. You know what? The minute he said, open the tomb, a lot of voices could have been yelling. Both sisters, all the friends, all the looky-loos, Oprah, Dr. Phil, Carson Palmer. I don't know why I threw him in there, but I was feeling very cardinal right now. It didn't matter who called his name. Freedom comes from the voice of Jesus. And you know what? You've heard his voice up here this week. Maybe you're going to hear it now. Maybe you're going to hear it through your buddy, your table buddy, or someone who's going to walk with you tonight when you tell your story. Freedom comes from the voice of Jesus. The fourth one is this. Freedom happens outside the tomb. Freedom happens outside the tomb. Jesus said, come out. You know what we want? We want Jesus to come in. Some of you are still in bondage today because you're hiding in a tomb and you're afraid to come out because you don't want to let people know you escaped it. And freedom happens outside the tomb. For a lot of reasons. One, there's no testimony to Christ when you get fixed in the tomb. There's no encouragement to a brother who's in the same bondage as you when you get fixed in the tomb. We'd love it to look like a Hollywood movie where Jesus plays Rambo and he kicks open the hole in the cave, and he goes in and he grabs them and cleans them up, comes out with a fireman carry, and here's Jesus with Lazarus. What a great story, but that's not what he said here. He said, Lazarus, come out. Why? Because freedom happens outside the tomb. This is your outside the tomb moment tonight at your table. And some things are hard to say, and maybe you just need to look at somebody and say, I'd like to talk to you afterwards. That's cool. But you're still in bondage, and I'm still in bondage because I'm still hiding in my tomb, and I want to get all cleaned up before I come outside. Jesus said, come on outside. Let's deal with it. Because your healing is not a personal healing. Sometimes it's a community healing. It's not even about you. Your healing might be for 15 other people. They don't see it inside the tomb. That's why your healing happens outside the tomb. Fifth one. No one heals alone. Jesus said, hey, take his clothes off of him. And that's interesting because Jesus could have done a little I dream of genie. Clothes fall. He could have said clothes dissolve. But he didn't. He looked at people around and he said, go take his clothes off. You know what that tells me? That tells me that there are certain things God wants to accomplish in human history that he wants humans to do in this part of history. He wants us to partner with him in ministry. I mean, he gives us the joy of walking alongside somebody, putting our arm around him, crying with him. Henry talked about it last night. Scott talked about it today, about coming alongside people. He wants us to partner in that ministry. Because no one heals alone. And maybe your victory story could spawn another guy's victory story. And the last one we're going to cover after we come back. But freedom, true freedom, because when Jesus said you're free indeed. True freedom has benefits, fruits, and joy. We'll cover that. But take a minute. Your responsibility is to listen, not to interpret, not to fix, not to rearrange, not to one-up, not to diminish, just to listen. So the cool thing is, some of your journeys to salvation were the same, and what you find out when you share with other people is some of the struggles of this thing we call Christian life, and I'm supposed to be free and I'm not, even some of those journeys look the same. You realize you've listened to the lie of the enemy who told you you're the only one going through this and you'll never get free. And now you're sitting at a table and someone else just said, hey, I share the same thing. I think I'm here tonight just to tell a couple people freedom is here tonight if you want it. Now, you know what the hard part is how we ended? The last part is that no one heals alone. And what the church has done a disservice to believers in the past is to think that, are not to empower everybody in the church. I mean, you're equally important to someone in their story. And you think, if I could just be a pastor, if I could just be a speaker, then I could really talk to someone. Let me just tell you, from my point of view, pastors are weird dudes. I swear they are. They're weird, they're insecure, and people treat you different when you are a pastor. Like, you can break through somewhere that a pastor can't. I remember I played baseball with this guy, and I hadn't seen him for, 20 years. I was a youth pastor, and I was in Safeway, and I hear from behind the aisle, like, "No way!" And I turn around, "Gary, how the are you?" "I'm good." And then he proceeded to tell me about how crappy his life was, with a string of cuss words that was almost beautiful the way he wove them together. Eloquent. And I'm like, you know what? I would love to say it like that. And then he said, "So what are you doing now?" I said, "Oh, you know what? I'm a youth pastor now." He goes, "Praise the Lord. Let me tell you what God's done in my life." Well, that's weird. And you think, if I could just be a pastor or a professional, whatever. No, listen, you have a role that's probably more important than others. I think my favorite one was that I used to, when I was doing all the teaching, I would like to, Thursdays was my day, I'd like to really construct the majority of my message. And I'd go down, we had an Applebee's right by our church, and sometimes I'd go down there to lunch, and I would sit by myself, and I saw this guy, the waiter, and he would come to find out he's from Australia. And I brought my stuff in, I was going to eat, and I was working on my stuff. He comes up and he goes, "Say, what you working on? Like a school project?" School project. I'm 40-something years old, And I said, "You know what? No, I'm just working on a message." He goes, "A message? I mean, like a sermon that I'm going to do." He said, "You're a pastor?" And I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Oh, that's cool." And then kind of sheepishly backed away. And then I ordered my food. He brought it out, and he came up to me, and he had this weird look on his face. And he set my food on. He goes, "Let there be light." Yeah, that's in there, right? You're like, "No, this is a hamburger." You don't have to treat me weird because I'm a pastor. That's what happens, that people change. And so you have an entry point into people's lives that sometimes we don't. I don't even like to teach. Sometimes I feel funny about going to certain Bible groups because when someone asks a question, I feel like everybody's looking at me, "Well, not the Bible answer, man. I don't even know if I agree with half the things I say." So they look at you weird. My best friend when I was in elementary school and junior high was my pastor's son. And we were not a good combination together, but we were best friends. And his dad would tell these corny jokes all the time, but the one I remember stuck in my head was that in a little rural town, because he was from a little rural town in Kansas, the pastor went over to visit the widow lady who had a teenage son, 14, 15-year-old son. And while the pastor was in there, the boy comes running in, full speed, didn't even see the pastor there. And she goes, Mom, remember that raccoon that's been stealing all those eggs in the house? I trapped it in the barn." And she's like, and he goes, "I started throwing rocks at it, and it wouldn't die." And the mom's like, And he goes, then I got out my slingshot, and I started shooting rocks at it, and it wouldn't die. And the mom's really nervous, and then he goes, then I grabbed a bat. And she goes, and he turns around, and he sees the preacher. He goes, and then the dear Lord chose to call him home. That's how weird people are when they see a pastor. Seriously. And I got to tell you, the power of other is more about the power of other you and not the power of other professional. So, on this journey, you have some similarities. You've been saved some of you have been saved 10, 15, 20 years, and you may be more bondage today than you were before you got saved. That happens. It's weary to me, honestly. I'm tired of seeing the enemy just win in believers' lives, especially when I know there's victory out there. Especially when I can show them. I can't say that I've always lived in victory either, but I sure just don't give the enemy much leeway in my life. Yet, almost the entirety of my day is sitting with believers who are just so in bondage and so hopeless. And I'm telling you, this is me confessing to you, I'm almost ready to start another line of work. Old answer, I hadn't thought about it, but I think I could do a good job at that. Something else, because I can't stand to see the bondage that people are in. Tonight, there's a couple of you that you got to know, freedom is here. And maybe one of you free people, one of you free ones, need to walk alongside some, maybe that's why you're here today. It's not about your bondage, it's about helping someone else heal. So in that, what happens when you are set free? I had a friend who used to be the chaplain out at Arizona State Prison, and he introduced me. I got about 12 years ago, I got to meet the guy who, at that point, held the record for the shortest parole from the Arizona State Prison. 45 minutes. 45 minutes. Gates open, he walks out, hits the bar right there in Florence, gets in a fight, and he's back. What he had said is, when those gates opened and I looked out, freedom scared the hell out of me. I don't know how to handle freedom. Some of us are still in bondage because freedom scares us. It scares us because what responsibilities go with freedom, and what if I can't sustain this freedom? The sustaining part is not yours. The sustaining part is Christ. So when I see someone get victory over something, then I get to celebrate with them. And the cool thing is, no one celebrates alone. Here's what the prophet Joel said. He says it to them who had been, and when he uses this term, you've heard it, that he will repay the years of the locust. The locust was always a sign of judgment, and it wasn't real locusts. It was the armies of the Persians and the Babylonians who would come over it like swarms of locusts and destroyed them. But here's what he says to them, and he says it to us today, because God's the same today, yesterday, and forever. And so what he tells us them is good for us today. He said this, Joel chapter 2, I will repay you for the years the locusts have eaten. The great locust, remember that one? Remember the big bondage, the great locust? I'm going to repay you for that. The swarm of locusts, you remember them? You remember them? You ran with them. The little locust, I will repay all the years that the locust ate. Here's what we miss. I've read that verse 1,000 times. You know what I missed? Yes, I know God can redeem that. But he said, I will repay all the years. You've been in bondage for 20 years, he's going to repay you for every one of those years. That's what freedom looks like. Not just to get you out of your jail now. I'm going to repay you for all those 20 years you were in bondage. That's good news. Now listen, if I was at a Pentecostal church right now, they would be saying amen, running around, waving, whipping. I don't know what they do in a Pentecostal church, but they'd be doing it. Rolling on the floor, hysterically laughing. I don't know, but I'm going to give you another shot to respond to that, because Jesus said, I will repay all of those years, and that's for you. Amen. God, it's not supposed to be this hard. I know what you meant, though. You meant, amen! That's awesome. That's awesome. So what's it look like to celebrate with someone? Celebrate encourages someone. Celebrating with someone encourages me. You're sitting with your buddy who gets victory, and you're like, God, if he can get victory, it should be very easy for me. Whatever you have to tell yourself in that point. So I have a few of these here. And if you want to look on the Breathing Life blog, it's on there. And I have these here if a couple people want them to go through. It's a little exercise. But you look at your bondage, and now you're free. And instead of just grieving that, you celebrate it. How do you celebrate your newfound freedom? By changing the meaning of the past. You can change your past. You know that? You can't change the events of the past, but you can change the meaning the past has on you. They call that, in the psychological world, cognitive reframing, where I can go in and I can change the meaning of something, therefore I change the feeling that goes along with it. The lady who started MAD, Mothers Against Drunk Driving, she reframed the grief and death of her son into an organization that has saved hundreds of, maybe thousands of young people's lives. She reframed that. So it's on the blog, or you can grab them here while they last, to go through some of those things that have been hard in your life. That bondage you were in. Maybe that bondage you're in right now. How can I reframe that? How can I look at that instead of letting it defeat me every day? Say, God, you're just amazing at restoration. Like, it was Chuck, Chip and Joanna aren't the best flip-floppers around. You know, God can take the junk that we give Him and make something beautiful out of it. And then when we celebrate that, not only do we get the joy of that, because that was point number 6, freedom brings joy and fruit. And here's the cool thing about it all. When you reframe all that junk in your life, change the meaning, God gets glory for that. Because let's be honest. We're told we're supposed to give thanks in all things. So you go to work Monday and you get laid off. And you come home like, I know I'm supposed to give thanks. I'm going to do it. I'm not real happy about it. And I'm not even really sincere, but I know I've got to do it. Thank you, God, for laying me off. Hardly sincere. And this happened to a man that I've been counseling from Intel, who almost became suicidal. Made a lot of money, got laid off. And he said, I don't know what to do. He was just, we were meeting, I usually meet once a week or every other week. I was meeting like 4 days a week with this guy just to keep him off the ledge. 3 months later, he goes to this Dial Corporation up in Scottsdale and gets a job that starts at 62% more than he was making at Intel. So I looked at him, I said, tell me, reframe your layoff from Intel for me. He said, oh, getting laid off from Intel was the greatest thing that ever happened to me. Well, you know what? Sometimes God gets the glory when we look back and